Jonah Keri, CBS Sports MLB columnist, about some of them. There is a rumor floating around, and it's kind of sacrilegious, Jonah, in the Northeast here, especially in New York, that
hmm
the Yankees might do a deal with the Red Sox. What, for Carlos Beltran? Could that happen?
Well, I think that kind of stuff has changed a little bit, Tiki. I mean, you're in this situation where you got wild card teams now, two wild card teams per league, and it's a short-term rental. It's not like Beltran is going to come back and hurt the Yankees for years to come. He's a free agent at the end of the year. I mean, heck, he could retire at the end of the year.
Yeah,
So,
good point.
yeah, I think the Yankees look at it and just say, hey, man, if the Red Sox are going to give us 5% more than the next guy, then that's fine. If the Red Sox end up hanging a banner because Carlos Beltran hits a home run, I'm sure there are 12 people that are upset about that, but everybody else is like, whatever. We have this prospect, and he'll help us in the future.
Yeah, no, it seemed like the Yankees were in a decision-making mode for a lot of the leading up to this trade deadline. Should they hold on, or should they acquire, or should they sell? Ultimately, they're selling. Who else is going to go out the door for the Yankees as they now seem like they're rebuilding?
Yeah, I don't know that it's a full rebuild. If you notice when they traded Aroldis Chapman and Andrew Miller, they subsequently went and acquired Tyler Clippard to help their bullpen, and he's a guy who's a veteran. I mean, you describe him as a buy rather than a sell. So I think the Yankees are sort of trying to have it both ways. They're saying, all right, we've got these assets. We can move them for a lot of young talent, and they really did. This kid, Clint Frazier from the Indian system, looks really good, as well as Gleyber Torres from the Cubs. I mean, they got pieces that they need because they don't have a young team and they don't have a dynamic team in terms of talent with upside. So they did that, but they didn't wave the white flag fully. They got Clippard. The bullpen's still pretty good. They still got Betances. And, to me, I think the only guy that seems very likely to move is Beltran because Beltran's 39 and he's a free agent at the end of the season. But I'm not sure if they trade
Yeah.
Brian McCann or anybody like that. I think that they're going to, let alone Didi Gregorius or Tanaka, I think odds are they probably hang on to most, if not all, of the rest of the roster except for Beltran.
Jonah Keri, CBS Sports MLB columnist, joining us here on Tiki and Tierney. Now, the Indians seem like they're making a push. It's all in for
Yeah.
2016 for them. They acquire Andrew Miller. They obviously had the Jonathan Lucroy trade, which fell through. Have you ever? I mean, it's odd, that one, because he wants to go play for a winner, but he vetoes the Indians because he wants to be able to maximize his earning potential going forward. Is that odd, or is that the right move? Bad move? How do we look at it?
Yeah, I guess with what's been coming out, Ken Rosenthal and some other people have reported it, that the Indians were saying, well, Yan Gomes, our catcher next year, you can be our first baseman slash DH slash catcher. I mean, Lucroy's a better player than Yan Gomes. I understand loyalty, and, there's this idea, right, in football, any sport, baseball, basketball, that if it's your job and you get hurt, maybe you shouldn't be replaced. But people say that, and then they get replaced all the time. That happens. You got a running back, something happens to his knee, other guy comes off and reels off 150 yards a game. It's like, yeah, okay, that guy's really good. We're going to put him on our lineup. Same thing with Lucroy, and I'm a little surprised by that stance, honestly. I think they probably could have been maybe sweet-talk the guy a little bit more. But I will say nobody is vilified in my mind here because I've always been a big – this is going back to like the days of Kurt Flood, basically agitating for free agency in the 60s.
Yeah.
To me, players have worked very hard to have the same rights that sports writers, talk radio hosts, dentists, school teachers, everybody has, which is mobility, call your own shots, decide what you want to do. If Lucroy has a no-trade clause, which was negotiated in his contract, he doesn't want to come. He's not a bad guy. It doesn't mean that he's not a winner because he doesn't want to play for a winning team. It means that he's trying to do what's best for him and his family, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, you can't fault them on that one. There were some names that were floating around prior to this week that we thought may get moved. Let me run down a few of them. Chris Sale, the White Sox going to do anything with him, or are they holding?
Yeah, that is, I think, the big one here because he would be the best player to go in the deadline. I mean, maybe Andrew Miller's the best guy so far, but obviously Sale being a starting pitcher, is going to have more impact than a reliever. He's a Cy Young caliber guy. He might win the Cy Young this year. I mean, he's really great. Yes, there was that little macrame controversy or whatever last week, but I don't think that's a major issue. But to me, you look at it, and there's only a couple teams that have the talent to pull something like that off, the young talent, in bundles, and really that's Boston and Texas. And so, push comes to shove, I think that the Red Sox said, here are a bunch of really good guys. Then the White Sox would say, fine. But that sort of remains to be seen. The Red Sox at the end of it have to actually pull the trigger on something like that because they're really going to have to empty their farm system, maybe even a young piece from their current major league roster, and that's not always easy to do. The good thing I will say is if you look at not just the talent of Sale, but his contract, he more or less is locked up through 2019 if you count club options and cheap. He's probably the best asset just for pitching on any team in all of baseball. Clayton Kershaw's a better pitcher, but he's got an opt-out clause coming up in his contract. Just the way that you can control him inexpensively makes him insanely valuable, no matter what he does off the field.
CBS Sports MLB columnist Jonah Keri joining us here this morning. You know, Jonah, a guy who I loved, was infatuated with because he looked like a football player when he came in as a Cuban defect. Yasiel Puig, it seems like his time in Los Angeles is over. Do you think they find a way to move him somewhere? And really, who could use him, or who could, I don't know, get him right?
Yeah, so just to preface this with 10 seconds or 5 seconds of background, I wrote a book a few years ago called The Extra 2%, which was about the Tampa Bay Rays, kind of like a Moneyballish sort of book, and getting inside the organization, talking about their philosophies, and that was all Andrew Friedman. And so just knowing what I know about Andrew Friedman and also just having my ear to the ground, I know that they've been open to trading the guy for a while now. It's not like they just thought of it now for a variety of reasons. Number one being that as good as he looked at the beginning, and Vince Scully called him a wild horse in a good way. As you said, he looked like a football player. He just hasn't been that good after the first 3 or 4 months of his rookie season, kind of tailing off a little bit and then struggling with injuries. I don't even know that, statistically, he's not even a league average player at this point. Doesn't mean he can't turn around. He's a young guy, but you wonder about that. And I think the thing that makes it hard with Puig is, what is Puig? So he's in his 20s. He's signed for a couple more seasons. So you could argue that he's a guy, not quite a prospect, but somebody that you have as a keeper a little bit. But so that means that I guess you trade an older veteran to get Puig maybe. On the flip side, you could say, well, he's a guy who can help us win now because he's a major leaguer, except that he's not actually that good right now. So I think that Puig, to me, if he was going to go, he would go to a team that is creative, that wouldn't look at it and just say, well, we know that he's the last piece, or we know that he's the building block. They would say, hey, he's an asset. We're just going to take him. So that's a team like a Tampa Bay, I think a progressive team that would say, oh, well, we just want to have the guy and we'll figure out the details later. And not for nothing, but I also know for a fact that Friedman and the Dodgers have been talking heavily to Tampa Bay about Chris Archer and about Matt Moore and Jake Odorizzi and all their young pitchers. And so in terms of a package deal, because I don't think it's a one-for-one, but yeah, Puig and a bunch of other dudes going for, more – maybe Archer, something like that. That's at least within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, God, it sounds like he's in purgatory a little bit. From you see a Puig standpoint, kind of hard to figure out where your life and career is going. Last one for you here, Jonah. Who's done the best for themselves at this trade deadline moment? Is it the Indians?
Yeah, I mean, the Miller trade was big. Obviously, if they got Lucroy, too, that would have been something. But, I have to tell you, I wrote a piece for CBS last week, and it was talking about the value of, I think I used the word incrementalism, which basically just means, they're just piecing it together here a little bit, and the Blue Jays have done that a little. The Blue Jays did not go out and get a splashy guy, and I know splashy guys get the headlines, but they more or less got Melvin Upton for nothing. They more or less got Joaquin Benoit for nothing. A week or two ago, they got Jason Grilli for nothing. So they're a better team right now, and they haven't strip-mined their farm system. And, in terms of who's going to win the World Series this year, that's obviously what we're all focusing on. But, there have been trades. John Smoltz was a prospect when he got traded for Doyle Alexander, a veteran relief pitcher. John Smoltz went on to make the Hall of Fame. Jeff Bagwell was traded for a guy named Larry Anderson, a swingman kind of thing. Jeff Bagwell never played a game for the Red Sox, played for the Astros. He might make the Hall of Fame next year. I really do think there's something to the idea that make your team better, but don't strip mine it to the point that you've got nothing left in young talent, because if that happens, in 2 years from now, you're going to be the Sellers because you'll have nothing left. You'll be the new Yankees. So I like what the Blue Jays did. Very quiet and subtle, but still making some moves that kind of help them on the margin.
Yeah, you're basically tied with the Baltimore Orioles in the American League East. So they get better. They could take the division. Jonah, I appreciate you joining me this morning. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir.
I know you're going to be busy over the next few hours, so thanks for taking some time out.
I appreciate it.